What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Climate change or, replacing pipes is not something we just decided to say, we'll see. Knowing how unpopular it is to open the street and change pipes because, it's not sexy. You don't win votes with that, but it is absolutely necessary.
Okay, that's from the morning's press conference. Valerie Plante out there trying to explain what's going to be happening next as far as that pipe, the big water main burst, the pipe burst that happened on Friday. Jim Mennie's on the line. So, Jim, we've talked about this before, the fact that, no, infrastructure is not sexy, but, this is going to start to happen more and more often, and people are wondering if the mayor's up to it.
Well, listen, I think, first of all, we got to take a little trip down memory lane. And before we do that, everyone take a deep breath and calm the hell down, okay? This pipe, this 7-foot diameter pipe was installed in 2008. That's 9 years before Valerie Plante became mayor. At the height of the mayoralty of Gerald Tremblay, okay? I don't think there was a ribbon-cutting ceremony. I'm sure people complained about traffic being stopped to accommodate the construction, but that's when it happened. The inspection took place in 2018, which means Valerie Plante had been mayor for less than a year when this thing was identified as being potentially problematic. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Valerie Plante did not invent the phrase infrastructure isn't sexy. When I was covering both Laval overpass collapses, I was speaking to engineering experts who essentially used, in one case, did use exactly the same words. Politicians don't get tangled up in this because infrastructure isn't sexy. So let's stop trying to link, and this is the biggest disservice we can do to ourselves, and to a certain extent, you're giving Valerie Plante a free pass. This has got nothing to do with bicycle paths or traffic calming measures. You can be angry about that, but please, let's not mix apples and oranges. Right now, there is a bomb-sized crater on Hamilavac, okay, exposing a ruptured pipe. They're telling me that this pipe, which is, 7 feet in diameter, began to deteriorate perhaps because of salt infiltration. If you look at the size of that crater, you look at how deep that pipe was, that's one heck of a lot of salt that percolated down, in 16 years before it finally got to there. The other thing is, I'm looking at this pipe, and just to address your whole thing, why don't we keep a spare? I'm looking at this thing. It looks like there's a center, a sort of a coiled metal center. They probably had to bake that concrete around. I'm not an expert, but frankly, Aaron, I think these things are made to be put underground as quickly as possible. I don't think you can keep them in a warehouse for any amount of time. But on top of everything else, I want to know, was one of the elements in this pipe, and I think this is what we have to focus on. Is it possible one of the elements in this pipe was, in fact, papier-mâché? Because I'm telling you, I'm looking at that hole, and I'm looking at the thickness of that pipe. And something tells me whoever made this thing, maybe it was for a different market, a market where they don't use salt on the roads, a market where perhaps there's no winter. But, let's not lose sight of the fact that if there's another 100 clicks or so of this stuff underground, it's going to have to be identified. The idea that they're smearing it with epoxy scares the hell out of me because, from my understanding, this is a pipe that's used to supply drinking water. And if you're telling me that salt was able to infiltrate the pipe, who knows what the epoxy is going to do? But all that said, Aaron, I've been covering this story for like 30 years. I think the same way that we have an auditor general to look at government spending, we should have the equivalent of an auditor general of infrastructure. And he or she will not have the power to spend. We can't take that away from elected officials. But he or she would have the power, like on a 6-month basis, to update and it would almost take out perhaps legislation, make sure that it appears on news sites so that when a pipe like this is in danger, is problematic, I don't get to find out about it after the thing blows up. Okay? I find out about it when they find out about it. We know about it. And then it's up to the elected officials to turn around and say, this could be a problem. Maybe we should do something about it. But in the meantime, it's easy to point the finger. But this, as you quite rightly point out, Aaron, is a problem that dates back decades. I'm sure there are all kinds of other, jack-in-the-box situations that you and I and Montrealers are going to have to endure in the years to come. But the fact is, You cannot hang this on one person. There's plenty of blame to go around, and there's plenty of people to be blamed. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to have these pipes changed, if you want to have this inspection done on a regular basis, it's going to cause problems. And I guarantee you, the same people who are calling in today to complain about a busted pipe would be calling in a theoretical tomorrow to complain about traffic detours because they had to dig up the road to either replace it or inspect it.
So listen, a couple of points. First of all, the idea that you can't blame it, and I've said that in the past, right? This is from administration to administration, Jim,
Absolutely.
who just keep passing the buck because it's not something that generates votes. But this idea today that we found out that the city, and Valerie Plante was mayor then, and may have been only a year, but she was mayor. Mm-hmm. They found out in 2018 this thing was, I don't know what, faulty, potentially faulty, whatever. Why would you decide, and again, maybe it's not fair to criticize her, someone in the department maybe should, why would you wait 6 years to schedule an investigation of what you had been told might be problematic?
One, we're presuming she was told, and I agree with you. I believe that, and I think she'd agree too, that the buck stops with her. But the fact is, when you look at how there's 29,000 employees in the city of Montreal. Would anyone want to be the first one to go up to even their boss and say, listen, boss, we're talking a couple of $100 million here because it's going to have to be dug up because if we don't, it's going to blow up. I'm not really sure that anybody was rushing to somebody's desk to share that information. If indeed they recognize the information, if indeed they recognize the warning signs, I have no idea of how many sets of eyes or how many qualified sets of eyes were examining the results of that assessment, which I'm presuming as well, unless I'm mistaking something here, because I know they have these little gizmos with cameras that they run through the pipes. Yeah. Okay. So I'm presuming they saw it from the inside. If they had that information, your question is extremely germane and essential. That who knew what when, but we're also talking about who knew what when in, God help us, 2018. So it's still 6 years ago. Do we want to blame somebody? By all means, but I'd say right now we have a piece of pipe that wasn't supposed to explode that exploded. I would focus for the time being on that rather than the policies of Valerie Plante. I would focus on, because that's our money, and it's all of our money. It's, whether you live in Montreal or not, you're going to get stuck for this because down the road, the city's going to claim all kinds of infrastructure expenses and so on and so forth. It's always the same thing. The city needs Quebec money to run, and I'm pretty sure this pipe, as I said last week, you can't go down to Home Depot and pick up a fresh one. It's going to be custom made. It's going to take months to get this thing finally finished. And then we cross our fingers and hope it doesn't happen again. There's something wrong with this issue.
Yeah,
so clearly,
you're right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you're right. That's not a plan. We'll cross our fingers and hope for the best. So the city is kind of hamstrung here in a sense because if you, as you just said, Jim, if we're going to allocate money to take care of these sorts of things, what's going to happen? Taxes will have to go up, and then the mayor will be taken to task for doing that. So how about you just say, you know what? Some of the other projects we had that we were going to invest money in, we're going to put those on the side for now. We'll put them on hold so we can invest money in this because this is a much potentially bigger problem.
Are you referring to the $500 million that's going to be spent over the next five years on bike paths?
Certainly not, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and on whatever they spent for Camellia Hood, if that ever comes to fruition.
Oh, there you go. No, okay. But listen, like I say, look, the whole system's a bomb waiting to go off.
Yeah.
But what I find weird about this one is that of all the pipe stories that I've done, and God help me, I've done scores of them. Okay, this is the first time where the age of the hardware is indeed it's noticeable because it's so young. This was not supposed to happen, Aaron. I'm very sorry. Yeah. You show me some other instance, certainly in the city of Montreal, where a piece of hardware this young decided to pop, and relatively speaking, this young decided to pop, and under this pressure, that was like whatever happened there, whether it was a surge or whether it was, I don't know. I would think, as I said last week, if this thing was about to blow, you'd think there'd be something in the system that said, excuse me, we may have something of a rupture coming on very, very soon. This seems to have taken everyone by surprise. 6 o'clock in the morning. I know we had one caller who pointed out quite rightly, they were just damn lucky there was nobody walking through that neighborhood when this went up. This went up like a bomb blast. So all of these questions have to be answered. But I would just urge our listeners, and I understand it can be very frustrating sometimes, especially the city of Montreal. But just don't lose sight of the fact that, this is not about bike paths. It's not about the regular stuff that gets you angry. Get angry about this, but get angry for the right reasons. My first reason is Who in the hell sold us this piece of pipe, and was this supposed to happen?
Yeah, we had to wrap up. But to your point earlier, so this is 1985. This was installed, and as you said off the top, Jim, you imagine if someone ordered a concrete pipe that was going to go carry water, which was steel reinforced, put it in the ground. We've been putting salt on our streets forever. This was nothing new. Wouldn't someone think to say that, hey, by the way, we're in Montreal, we salt our streets in the winter. Will that potentially cause a problem?
You kind of wonder, maybe there was one line in the instructions they didn't look at that said, do not use salt.
If only.
If only.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adamant.